I sat up straight in bed and looked at the clock on the bedside table. It was 2:30 a.m. The t-shirt I wore to bed was soaking wet, as it always was when I had the dream. I looked over at my wife, and she was sound asleep. I was relieved that I hadn't awakened her this time. I must not have been ranting in my sleep. I didn't know what triggered the dream, but it was always the same. It was a dream-clouded version of the memories of an event that took place more than 2 years ago. In the dream, I was sitting at the desk in my study. In front of me sat a half-full bottle of scotch, an empty glass, and a .38 revolver. I would pour myself a full glass of scotch and drink it down in one large gulp. It always registered in my dream that I neither tasted nor felt the effects of the scotch as it went down. I would then pick up the gun and open the cylinder to make sure all 6 chambers contained live cartridges. Then I would say, "It's full, none missing. I want to kill them. I want to kill all 3 of those. If I do it, I will go to jail. No, I'll kill myself. God damn them." The words were not always the same, but the idea was. Thank God the dreams had become much less frequent. At first, I had one every week, sometimes twice a week, but now it was less than once every 2 months. While I was dreaming, it seemed so real, like it was really happening, but the reality was that the dream bore very little resemblance to the actual event. There was a bottle of scotch involved, but I was on the sofa in the living room. There was no .38 revolver. I don't own a gun. The threats to kill. I don't remember ever making those that night. I got drunk, very drunk, and fell asleep on the sofa. To make sense of this, I have to go back years to begin the story. The year 2002 was a bad one. The problem started in January, with my wife Kathy and me fighting with the city inspectors over the design of the new home we were planning to build. The inspector repeatedly rejected our application for a building permit until I finally got an engineer to sign off on our blueprint, saying that what we wanted to do was safe and met all current building codes. Once we finally had the permit, the fight began with our contractor to get him to stay on schedule, and this lasted until we were able to move into the house in August. In addition to the problems getting our house built, Kathy and I were kept very busy in our chosen careers. My name is Fred Alpin, and March 6, 2002 marked the 6th anniversary for Kathy and me. Outside of the problems we were having getting our house built, things had been going very well for us. For my part, I had been working for Independent Investigations Corporation, IC, in Indianapolis for 8 years. IC is not a typical private detective agency. We provide investigative services to large insurance companies. Our job was to investigate insurance claims for fraud, retrieve stolen property, or mitigate our clients' losses in any way possible. For our services, we were paid a percentage of the value of items we recovered or what we saved the insurance companies. I am a lead investigator, which allows me to pick the cases I want to work on and assign cases to others. This business is quite lucrative. I was 30 years old and had just started to find some gray hairs in my otherwise thick head of dark brown hair. I've been described as confident. I've heard men described as handsome, sexy, hot, a hunk, or even a wasted suit. But me? I'm confident. Whatever that means, I'm not movie star handsome or freak show ugly. My facial features are pretty average, except that my nose is a little crooked from an amateur boxing match in college. I have very dark brown eyes. At 6 feet 2 inches and 185 pounds, I have a tall, athletic build, and I always stand erect. My facial expressions seldom give away what I am thinking. Kathy was 29 years old, and at 5 feet 8 inches, she was the most stunning woman I knew. Her dark brown hair with red highlights hung in long curls to her shoulders. Her eyes were blue with tiny specks of green in the irises. At 125 pounds, Kathy was slim but very well proportioned. Kathy had the legs of a dancer, nicely shaped calves, and firm thighs with soft, smooth skin. Kathy had been the manager of the accounting department at DCNH for 2 years and had 20 accountants reporting to her. DCNH specialized in mergers and acquisitions and had been having a good run over the last couple of years, which meant Kathy had received some nice year-end bonuses. But early in 2002, there were problems at the DCNH offices in Indianapolis. In February, the manager of the Indianapolis office was fired and replaced by Greg Bartlett. Greg was about 5 feet 5 inches tall, at least 20 pounds overweight, and nearly bald, with the remaining hair forming a horseshoe around his head. Kathy said Bartlett was a good manager, and when I met him, I found him to be likable. At the same time, DCNH transferred one of their vice presidents to the office. Kathy said the company decided it was a good idea to spread their VPs around different cities so they could visit customers and help close big deals. The VP's name was Jack Hansen, and he had moved to Indianapolis from New York. Hansen was about 45 years old, 6 feet tall with gray hair. He was in good physical condition and obviously worked out regularly. When I met him, he was friendly, but he struck me as someone with a wandering eye. I noticed the way he looked at women passing by, as though he was considering whether he wanted to date them. He was married, but I doubted that would slow him down. I'd met many men like him before, and I didn't like them either. Kathy seemed to think he was great. She said everyone at DCNH did too, always talking about his great ideas for driving new business, which would mean more money for her. Construction of our new house was on schedule by summer, and the turmoil caused by the management changes at DCNH had settled down. According to Kathy, business was picking up thanks to Mr. Hansen. We moved into our new house just outside of Indianapolis in the second week of August, and we loved it. On the day we moved in, I jokingly told Kathy that I wanted to make love to her in every room in the house. Kathy looked around at all the boxes waiting to be unpacked, took my hand, and led me into the kitchen. "Let's get the kitchen out of the way right now," Kathy said. I had only been joking, but my reaction was serious. We had a passionate time together. When we finished, she headed off to the bathroom to freshen up. As she left, Kathy called back, "We'll do the bedroom tonight and the living room tomorrow. Now, get back to work." We did the bedroom that night, but didn't get to the other rooms. Between our jobs and settling into the house, we didn't have time or energy to take our intimacy outside of our bedroom. However, we did stay connected in our bedroom. It just seemed that the only time we were together was at night, after getting into bed. One night, while we were in bed, I brought up starting a family. We had discussed it before, and Kathy said she wanted to start in the fall, hoping for a summer baby. "I think it's time you get off your birth control pills, and we get you pregnant," I said. "I think we should wait a little longer," she replied. "Jack suggested I should wait until next year. He said I'm in line for a promotion that might happen by the end of the year. I want to wait until I get the promotion." "Jack," I asked, "since when are you on a first-name basis with corporate vice presidents?" "We're pretty informal around the office," she responded. "Why would you discuss our plans for starting a family with him?" I was irritated that she had talked about our personal matters with this guy. He asked me if we were planning on having children, so I told him we planned to start this fall. That's when he suggested I wait until next year. I wasn't happy about it, but I agreed to wait until January. Toward the end of the year, Kathy and I were both working long hours, and we weren't spending enough time together. We tried to make weekends special, and that helped, but our work even began to intrude on our weekends. DCNH was trying to win a contract for a large merger opportunity, which kept Kathy's department busy. As for me, I was running 3 investigations that I needed to close before the year's end. On the last weekend in November, Kathy and I both managed to get time off, so we went out and did our Christmas shopping. At dinner that evening, Kathy shared some good news. "It looks like we'll close a deal with National Pharmaceutical to handle their merger with Keystone Pharmaceutical by December 20th. That means I should get my promotion this year." "Really? That's terrific. Then we can start working to get you pregnant. Why don't we start tonight? Can't start tonight. I'm still on the pill, she said. Besides, I want to wait a few more months to get settled into my new job before taking off for maternity leave. And don't you dare tell anyone that I told you this. I could get into a lot of trouble if this got out, and it could kill the deal with National. I was disappointed that Kathy wanted to delay starting a family again, but I understood her reasons. You know I won't tell anyone, I said. Should I buy stock in National Pharmaceutical on Monday? Hell no, she replied. That's insider trading. If you do that, we could all go to jail. I was just joking, I said. I know we can't do anything like that. You can count on my discretion. I know, she responded. I'm just nervous about this one. We're so close, I don't want anything to go wrong. December is company Christmas party season, and our company was no exception. Our party was on Friday, December 6th. The party was pretty tame. There were about 43 people in attendance, including employees, spouses, and significant others. We had drinks, appetizers, dinner, and then dancing. The main reason our party wasn't wild was that most of the IC employees were investigators, and we spend most of our time in the field. We don't know each other all that well. I have one close friend at IC, Bill Ripley. We've worked together on several cases over the years. As for the rest of the team, I know who they are, but I couldn't tell you their spouses' names or how many children they have. We're not a close-knit group, unlike Kathy's crew at ECNH. Kathy and I sat with Bill and his wife, Susan, and had a good time despite the low-key party. We stayed until midnight, and then Kathy and I went home. When we got into the house, I led Kathy up to our bedroom. Once there, I pulled her close and kissed her. Then, while holding each other, I began to kiss her neck, which drives her crazy. As I did this, I couldn't help inhaling her wonderful scent. She asked me to sit up, then helped me undress and lie down on the bed. She climbed on top of me, and her confident, assertive demeanor caught me off guard. "Oh yeah," was all I could manage to say. Alone, her scent was enough to invigorate me, and soon we were fully connected in our private world. After a few moments of intimacy, we started discussing our future family, both agreeing on having 2 kids, 2 years apart. Kathy mentioned she would stop taking her birth control pills in February, hoping for a baby in November if she got her promotion. Although I wasn't thrilled about the wait, I respected that she would be the one going through the pregnancy. It was kind of strange, but nice, to talk about baby names while being so close. I loved Kathy with all my heart, making that night incredibly special to me. Saturday brought a disturbing change. I had to work a half day, and when I came home, Kathy was sitting in the family room, staring out the window. She didn't look at me as I came in, and when I spoke to her, she jumped as though she hadn't realized I was there. Something was clearly bothering her, and it was a big deal. I wanted to ask her about it, but I gave her time to open up. After dinner, I decided to press her for an explanation. Early in our marriage, we made a deal. Whoever cooked could relax after the meal while the other did the dishes. That night, Kathy cooked, so I cleaned up. When I was done, I joined her in the family room. "Kathy, what's going on? It's obvious something is bothering you. Is there anything I can do to help?" I asked. "There's a problem with the National Pharmaceutical deal," she said. "It turns out that National's president, Mr. Benson, is making unrealistic demands. If we don't meet them, it could cost us the deal. If we don't get this contract, it will ruin everything." "It won't ruin everything," I said. "Whatever happens, we have each other. What's the worst that could happen?" "You don't understand," she said. "If the deal falls apart, it will be because of me. I could lose my job." "How could it be your fault if the deal falls through? You're not in sales," I said. "I can't talk to anyone outside of DCN Asia about this," she said. "I didn't do anything wrong, but if the deal doesn't go through, I'll get blamed. Please, just let me work through this myself." I wanted to say more, but the look on her face told me the conversation was over. The next day, I hoped Kathy would be in a better mood, but she seemed even more distant. Monday morning, I got up early and fixed breakfast, but she barely touched hers. After drinking her coffee, she went to shower. I busied myself shoveling the snow that had fallen overnight from the driveway. When I came back into the house, Kathy was getting ready to leave for work. "It's only 6:30. Why are you leaving so early?" I asked. "I have to get ready for some important meetings," she said, giving me a brief kiss before heading to the garage. Monday is trash day, so I had to empty all the wastebaskets and take the trash out to the curb. While dumping the wastebasket from our bathroom into the trash bag, something fell out and disappeared. I tried to find it for a few minutes, but eventually gave up. I took the trash out and brought the bins to the street. Back in the kitchen, I took another look around to find the object but didn't see anything. I went upstairs to shower and get ready for work. Monday evening, I tried to broach the subject again. "Have things gotten any better at work?" I asked. "You know I can't talk about this," she said. "I'm under a lot of pressure, but I'll get through it." By Wednesday, Kathy started to come out of her funk. When I came home that evening, she greeted me with a kiss and told me she loved me, something she hadn't done since Friday night. Although she wasn't completely back to normal, the faraway look was gone. "Can you talk about what's going on now, or is it still off limits?" I asked. "I'm not supposed to talk about it," she said, "but it looks like we found a way to make Mr. Benson happy. Jack thinks things will turn out all right." I could hear relief in her voice, but she didn't smile, which told me she was still under stress. I hoped it would all be over soon. For some reason, it always bothered me when Kathy called Hanson Jack. She explained that things were informal at the office, but she referred to Greg Bartlett as Mr. Bartlett. I guess I didn't understand. That night, Kathy wanted me to hold her, but she didn't want to be intimate. I was beginning to feel the weight of Kathy's problems. I held her until she fell asleep, then rolled over to my side and tried to sleep. After 20 minutes of tossing and turning, I got up and went to the kitchen for a drink. While standing at the island counter drinking my water, I spotted Kathy's briefcase on a chair. I had never invaded Kathy's privacy before, but for some reason that night, I decided to look inside. Kathy hadn't locked the case, so I set it on the countertop and opened it. There were a lot of papers, but nothing that answered my questions. I took out her day planner and looked through her calendar and notes. Monday showed 2 meetings with Mr. Bartlett. The second, including Mr. Hanson. Tuesday had another meeting with Hanson, and Wednesday listed a meeting with Hanson and Mr. Benson, the president of National Pharmaceuticals. It was clear why Kathy was under pressure, but I didn't understand why she was meeting with a customer. She worked in accounting and had never been part of a negotiating team before. I wondered if her promotion meant she was moving out of accounting and into sales. Kathy's planner also showed more meetings with Bartlett and another with Hanson on the morning of December 20th. The 20th also had a notation, 10 p.m. I wondered if that was related to the meeting with Hanson or DC&H's Christmas party. Another strange notation appeared on her month-at-a-glance calendar. Starting December 6th, Kathy had written started, and each day afterward was numbered from 1 to 14, with the 14th day, December 20th, circled and underlined. I couldn't figure out what it meant and decided I'd have to think about it for a while. Over the next few days, Kathy's mood improved, but she remained a little distant. As an investigator, I'd learned how to get answers without appearing to interrogate someone. By piecing together things Kathy told me, I determined that December 20th was critical. If Mr. Benson was going to sign a contract with DC&H, it would happen that day. On Friday, December 13th, I closed one of the 3 cases I was working on and went out for a beer with Bill Ripley to celebrate. After a couple of beers, I talked to Bill about the notation in Kathy's day planner without revealing whose planner it was. I told him it was from a case I was working on and explained the numbers 1 through 14, ending on the 20th, circled and underlined. Bill looked at me and said, "Sorry, buddy, but I can't help you. It doesn't ring any bells with me. You said the planner belonged to a woman, right?" "Yes," I replied. Then I suggest you talk to Mary Frell, Bill said. You might need a female perspective to crack this one. Bill was right. A woman's perspective was probably what I needed. Mary Frell was one of the best investigators at sea, and one of only 3 women in the company. I dropped the subject so Bill wouldn't start thinking I was obsessed with the case. We had a couple more beers and just talked. During our conversation, I mentioned my dream of someday starting my own investigative agency. If you ever do, let me know, Bill said. I'll come work for you, but you'll have to pay me better than I see now. Bill was laughing as he said that. Pay you more? Hell, you're already overpaid, I said. I'm serious, Bill replied. If you ever do decide to go out on your own, come talk to me. It will probably never happen, I said. But if I ever start my own agency, you'll be the first person I talk to. We chatted a while longer, and then I went home. It was another frustrating weekend. Kathy was attentive and affectionate, but somehow we managed to get through the weekend without being intimate. Kathy and I hadn't been close for more than a week, and it was beginning to disturb me. Not just because I was being cut off, but because I didn't understand why. On Monday morning, I told Kathy that I was probably going to have to work late every night to try and wrap up the 2 cases I was working on. You can't work late Friday, she said. You have to be home in time to get ready for the party. What time do we have to be there? I asked. The party starts at 8 o'clock. I want to be there no later than 8:30, Kathy replied. So you need to be home by 7 o'clock to get ready. Okay, I'll be home by 7, I said. I was frustrated, and by midweek, I was beginning to get angry with Kathy. I had closed my second case on Tuesday and took Kathy out to dinner to celebrate. But afterward, she told me she didn't feel well. Once again, we did not connect, and she put me off again on Wednesday night. It took all of my patience not to blow up at her. I knew she was going through a lot at work, but there was a limit to how long I was willing to wait. I convinced myself that everything would be resolved after Friday. Kathy would know about the National Pharmaceuticals deal, and should also know if she was getting her promotion. So I was prepared to be patient, at least until Friday. On Thursday, I had all but closed my last case. I would have one chance at a quick resolution on Friday morning. But if that didn't work, it would take the rest of the day. The problem was, if I didn't catch a break in the morning, it would be difficult to get everything done and be home by 7, as I promised Kathy. That evening at dinner, I told Kathy I was going to have a hard time getting home by 7. You promised, she said angrily. I know, I replied. I'm sorry, but I'm so close to closing this tomorrow. Tom, I could see her anger building. Kathy, you don't have to wait for me if I'm not here on time. Go without me. I'll get there as soon as I can. I should be able to make it by 9. I don't want to go without you, she said. I guess 9 o'clock will be all right. It's just that, well, I can't be any later than that. I'll do my best to get home by 7:30. If I'm not here in time, I'll meet you at the party, I said. Kathy didn't say any more about it. On Friday morning, I got the break I needed in my case. I had been assigned to recover some stolen jewelry from a home break-in. The merchandise was insured for over $1 million. The thief contacted the insurance company, offering to sell the jewelry back for $250,000, saving the company $750,000. The insurance company agreed and asked me to handle the transaction. It had taken me a while to gain the thief's confidence, but I set up a meeting to transfer the money for the jewels. I had to go to the insurance company to get the money, which involved a lot of paperwork. Luckily, I identified the thief and followed him to a coffee shop Friday morning. Then I called him to arrange the meeting for that afternoon. After the call, I followed him to an old garage on the west side of town. From across the street, I watched him go into the garage, open the trunk of an old car, and close it without taking anything out. Before leaving, he looked around but didn't see me. As soon as he left, I crossed the street and used a tire iron to break the small padlock on the garage door. Within minutes, I had the trunk open and found a small canvas bag containing all the stolen jewelry. I locked the garage as I left, taping a note to the broken padlock that read, "Better luck next time." Back at my office, I contacted the insurance company, informed them that I had recovered the jewels, and arranged for pickup. I was feeling pleased with myself. I had stopped a thief from profiting, saved the insurance company a lot of money, earned a nice fee for my company, and the victims got their jewelry back. It was a pretty good day's work, I thought. Afterward, I saw Mary Frell talking to another investigator. Once she finished, I invited her to lunch. Mary had been with IC for 4 years, and I had known her most of that time. She's almost 6 feet tall, with short blonde hair and piercing green eyes, both attractive and intimidating, qualities that made her great at her job. "Are you buying?" Mary asked. "I'll pay if you can help me with something I'm working on," I said. "Okay, you're on," Mary agreed. We walked across the street to a small sandwich shop, where I bought us 2 pastrami sandwiches and sodas. "This must not be that big of a case if this is all you're willing to spend," Mary joked. As we ate, I told her about the notations on Kathy's calendar. Without revealing who I was investigating, I explained how days 1 through 14 were numbered, with the 20th circled and underlined. Mary was silent for a long time, finishing her sandwich before smiling. "What are you smiling about?" I asked. "The numbers," she said. "It took me a while, but I think I know what that's about. You said she wrote started on the 6th, and the days were numbered 1 to 14, with December 20th being number 14, right?" "That's right," I said. "She's tracking her cycle because she's trying to get pregnant," Mary explained. I was stunned, not only because Mary figured it out so easily, but because it had never occurred to me. "I'm not sure, but it might make sense in the context of this case," I said. "Thanks for the help. I guess for the little bit of help I gave you, a pastrami sandwich was a fair payment after all," Mary said. After we finished our lunch, Mary and I went back to the office, and I spent the rest of the day catching up on paperwork and wondering why Kathy would be tracking her menstrual cycle. I couldn't remember when she had her last period. I never kept track of her cycles. I was always surprised when she would tell me that small craft warnings were up when I tried to initiate intimacy during her period. Another thing that puzzled me was that Kathy wasn't planning on stopping her birth control pills until at least February. So why would she be tracking her cycle? Could she be tracking this for someone else? I was starting to get a tight feeling in my gut. I was picking up little bits of information that weren't making sense yet, but I had a sense that I needed to get some answers soon. One thing I have learned from my training and experience is to be patient and wait until all the facts are in before jumping to any conclusions. If you act too quickly, the consequences could be dire. I have always been a patient person, so I was able to easily adopt that principle. I think that is probably why I have been so successful in this business. It would be difficult for me, but this was definitely a time for patience. By 5 p.m., I had finished up my work and was ready to head home. By the time I got to my car, it was already dark, and it looked as though it would start to snow at any time. As I drove home through rush hour traffic, I was feeling pretty good about myself. I had cleared 3 big cases off the books, got an answer to one of my questions about Kathy's day planner, and I was going to be home in plenty of time to take Kathy to her party, which I hoped would relieve some of her stress. I arrived home at about 5:30 p.m. and parked my car in the driveway. I didn't think it made any sense to put it in the garage if we were going back out again in a little while. I walked down to the street to get the mail and then walked up to the front door. I hadn't looked into the garage, so I didn't know if Kathy was home yet or not. I stepped up on the front porch, and as I was about to unlock the door, I noticed that the front hall light was on. I peeked through the small window next to the door to see if Kathy was in sight, but she wasn't, at least not immediately. I started to move back to unlock the door when I saw movement at the top of the stairs. Kathy was coming down the stairs, and I was shocked to see that she was completely unclothed. She was carrying something in her hands, but I couldn't see what it was at first. I leaned back from the window a bit because I didn't want Kathy to see my face and get startled. When she reached the bottom step, I could see that she was carrying a towel in one hand and a can of shaving cream in the other. That puzzled me. What was she doing with the shaving cream? When she stepped off the bottom step, Kathy turned to the right and walked into the living room, stopping next to a wing chair that was just a few feet inside the room. Kathy just stood there as if she had forgotten why she went in there in the first place. I couldn't take my eyes off her. She looked so beautiful standing there, her long dark brown hair hanging in curls over her shoulders, her strong but slender back tapering to where it joined her heart-shaped bum, and her beautiful legs. I could feel myself becoming excited as I stared at my lovely wife. I didn't want to move from that spot, but I was afraid she would turn around and see me peering through the window. I knew that if I tried to open the door with her standing so close by, it would scare her. I decided to go back and come in through the garage. At least then she would hear the garage door opening and know I was home. I knew I should move, but I couldn't resist enjoying the view for 2 more minutes. In those 2 minutes, my world changed. I watched what was happening and then dashed to my car. I opened the car door and pushed the button for the garage door opener. The door took about 15 seconds to open, and then I pulled the car into the garage. As I walked up the steps to the kitchen door, I hit the button to close the garage door and waited for it to close before opening the door into the kitchen. I figured that should have given Kathy enough warning that I was home. As I stepped into the kitchen, I was sure I heard a door close somewhere else in the house. I walked through the kitchen and into the dining room and then the living room. There was no sign of Kathy. "Kathy, I'm home," I yelled as I started up the stairs. As I walked into our bedroom, I called Kathy again, and this time she answered. "You're home early. That's great. I'm in the bathroom getting ready. Why don't you use the shower in the guest bathroom?" Kathy said. "Why?" "I'm busy in here," she added. I pretended that I didn't hear that, and just walked in on her. "What did you say?" I asked. Kathy was sitting on the side of the bathtub, and when I came in, she quickly tried to cover herself, but not fast enough. "I told you I was busy in here. Get out," she said. "What are you doing?" I asked. Kathy gave me a nervous look. She had been just about to start shaving when I walked into the bathroom. "It was supposed to be a surprise," she said. "For whom?" I asked. "For you, of course. I wanted to surprise you when we got home from the party tonight," she said. "Did I ever tell you I wanted you to shave?" I asked. "No, but I thought that I might," she said. "I don't remember you telling me that you wanted to shave yourself," I said. "I know I never mentioned it, but where did you get the idea that I wanted you to shave?" "Most certainly not from me," I said. Kathy was struggling to come up with an answer, and I was getting angrier by the second. "I just thought it would be something different. A lot of girls are doing this now, and I thought you might like it," Kathy said. "Shouldn't we have discussed this first to at least see how I felt about it?" I asked. "Maybe, but after all, it's not that big of a deal. It is my body, and if I want to shave off my kitty hair, that's my decision. If we don't like it, it will grow back," she said. She did have a point, but I wasn't giving in because there was more going on than what appeared on the surface. "Don't shave it now," I said. "We can discuss it later, and if it is that important to you, you can shave it tomorrow." The look on Kathy's face was more than just anger. There was also fear. I could understand the anger directed at me, but I couldn't understand the fear. "I'm ready to do it now, so why should I have to wait?" she said. "Because your husband is asking you to wait," I replied. "I don't like bald kitties. Why is it so important that you do it now?" I was all set to do it and want to do it now. "It's my hair, and if I want to shave it off, I will," she said. "Okay, then go ahead and shave. But if you do, you'll have to go to the party alone," I said, turning to walk out of the bathroom. "Why are you being so unfair? It's just something I want to do. So why do you have to make a big deal out of it?" Kathy asked. "I'm making a big deal out of this Because I don't think you're telling me the truth about why you want to shave your kitty, I said. You know I like your hair, so I know you weren't thinking of me when you decided to shave yourself. If you can't tell me the truth, then I will not discuss this any further. You can leave it alone, and we will go to the party, or you can shave it and go to the party by yourself. It's your choice. Kathy gave a sullen look, put the razor down, and climbed into the shower. I showered after Kathy and then lounged around in my bathrobe, drinking a beer while Kathy put on her makeup. Kathy didn't speak to me the whole time we were getting ready to go. I knew she was angry with me, so I didn't try to start any conversations, as that would only increase my own anger. I just tried to watch her surreptitiously as she got dressed. As angry as Kathy was with me, I would have been very surprised if she was dressing that sexy for me, unless it was to make me jealous. I wondered if she was dressing for someone else. Next, Kathy sat on the edge of the bed and put on a pair of black thigh-high stockings. As she rolled the stockings up her legs, I wondered if she was aware that I was watching her. Kathy didn't seem to acknowledge my presence in the bedroom. When she had both stockings pulled up, she got off the bed and walked to her closet. Even with everything that was running through my head, I still got an erection as I watched Kathy walking away from me. She disappeared into her closet and came out a minute later with her black cocktail dress already halfway on. She walked into the bathroom, pulling the dress down the rest of the way, and sat in front of the mirror to fix her hair. When Kathy came out and stood in front of me, I could feel my anger melting. But I couldn't allow that. I was going to need it to stay strong because I still didn't know what lay ahead that night. At 7:30, I asked Kathy if she was ready to go. "I'm ready," she said. "You look really beautiful," I told her. "You're going to melt someone's heart tonight." Kathy turned to go out the door and said, "Yours, I hope." I wondered if she meant to melt my heart or break it. We drove in silence for the first 15 minutes before Kathy finally spoke. "I'm sorry about the shaving thing," she said. "I just thought it was a good idea at the time, and I was so nervous about tonight that I guess I just snapped when you gave me a hard time about it." "No problem," I said. "We can discuss that over the weekend, but let's try to have some fun tonight." I was trying to lighten the mood a little. The party was catered at the company's offices in a large classroom on the first floor. As soon as Kathy and I walked in and checked our coats, Hanson came over and said hello. He took Kathy aside for a minute. I felt my blood pressure rising as I watched them. Kathy nodded yes a couple of times, then shook her head no. Hanson seemed upset, and Kathy became more animated. Their conversation ended when Hanson started to walk away. But then he spun around and came back, smiling. He suggested something to her, and I could tell she wasn't happy about it, but she nodded yes. When Kathy came back over, I asked, "What did Hanson want?" "The national pharmaceutical deal is closing tonight. I have to go to a meeting at 10 o'clock with Jack and Mr. Bartlett. If the meeting goes well, we'll get the national contract, so you'll get your promotion," she said. "Yes, if everything works out," she added, not looking as happy as she should have been. "Then we can start trying to make a baby," I said, hoping to get a reaction. "Yes, we can start our family," she said without emotion. As we walked into the big room where the party was being held, Kathy slipped her arm through mine and leaned close. The room was nicely decorated, with tables around the perimeter. A band was set up at one end, and there was a dancing area. At the far end, there was a buffet and an open bar. I scanned the room to see who was there. I didn't know many of the DCNH people well, but I was good at remembering faces. It didn't take long to spot him. He was standing next to the bar by himself, about 35 years old, around 6 feet tall and fit, dressed in a dark blue double-breasted suit. He looked like a handsome man. I pointed to him and asked Kathy, "Who's that guy standing by the bar?" "I don't know," she replied, but I could tell by her body language she wasn't being truthful. "Why don't we go over and get a drink?" I suggested. "There are some of my department members over there I'd like to say hello to. Why don't you get us both a drink, and I'll wait for you." She agreed, and I made my way to the bar. I ordered Kathy a glass of red wine and got myself a beer. As I turned to the man, I said, "Mr. Benson, how are you tonight?" A look of surprise crossed his face. "How do you know me?" he asked. "It's my job," I replied. "I have to take this wine to Miss Alpin, but I'd like to come back and talk to you if you don't mind." Benson studied me for a moment. I could tell that I worried him, but he didn't seem afraid of me. "Oh, okay. I'll be here," he said. I took Kathy her drink and told her I was going to circulate while she talked to her friends. "I don't want you to leave me," she said. "I need you to stay close tonight." "I won't be gone long," I replied. She gave me a sad look, but let me go. I returned to Benson. "My name is Fred. I work in security for DCNH," I said. "I just want to make sure there are no problems tonight. I guess Mr. Hansen has a fun evening planned." "That's what he tells me," Benson said. "I'm just killing time until the fun begins." "I guess for you that begins around 10 o'clock," I said. "You seem to know everything," Benson replied nervously. "Like I said, it's my job to know things." I smiled and winked. "I take it you like brunettes." "Love brunettes," he said, smiling. "Like Miss Alpin?" I asked. "Exactly," he said, returning my smile. I wanted to choke him, but I couldn't do that. "I have to circulate now," I said. "If you have any problems, just come find me." I muttered under my breath as I walked away. When I got back to the other side of the room, a man approached Kathy and asked her to dance. She turned him down and then grabbed my arm, pulling me onto the dance floor. As we danced, I kept an eye on Benson to make sure he wasn't watching us. I didn't want him to figure out I was Kathy's husband just yet. I was still formulating my plans, and it was already 9:30. My stomach was in knots from nervous stress. The song ended, and I started to move back toward our table when the band began playing a slow song. Kathy pulled me back onto the dance floor and held me close. She always liked to dance close, but this time it felt like she was trying to get inside me. She held me so tightly it was uncomfortable. At one point during the dance, I noticed Benson watching us, looking uptight. I smiled at him and gave him a thumbs up. When the dance ended, we headed back to the table. Just then, Greg Bartlett approached, carrying a small package. He whispered something to Kathy and handed her the package before leaving. Kathy came back, hiding the package behind her back. "I have to go to the ladies' room," she said. I looked at her and could see something in her eyes that made me feel sick. "Don't do it," I said. "Don't do what?" she asked, pulling her arm away from me. "You know what I'm talking about. Stop it now." "I don't know what you're talking about," she said and walked away. While she was gone, I reviewed everything I had seen and heard. I had started to figure out what was going on, and I was going to have to stop it. When I got home from work, I had seen Kathy standing nude in our living room through the window. A hand reached out from the chair next to her and touched her. Jack Hansen leaned up and kissed her. I couldn't walk in on that, so I made noise in the garage to let them know I was home. I figured Benson wanted Kathy and had demanded she shave for him. I guessed Hansen and Bartlett were helping him, using her to close the deal. But I had to stop it. I was sure that the package Bartlett handed Kathy contained shaving cream and a razor. Kathy was likely in the ladies' room shaving herself for Benson. It was 9:45, and she still hadn't returned. I was running out of time. I got up, planning to physically drag her out of the building, but an idea came to me when the band announced a break. I saw Benson, Bartlett, and Hansen standing together at the bar. I walked over to the lead singer and asked, "Can you lead your mic hot? I want to make some announcements." "Sure, no problem," he replied, handing me the wireless mic. I paced for a moment, took a deep breath, and flipped the mic on. "Can I have everyone's attention, please?" I started. At first, there was still noise in the room. "Can I have your attention, please?" I repeated. Slowly, the room quieted down. Kathy had just returned from the ladies' room and was staring at me. "Thank you," I just want to take a few minutes to talk to all of you on this special occasion. First, I wanted to say what a great party this is. Let's give a round of applause to the people who put this party on. Almost everyone applauded. Kathy walked slowly toward me, fear on her face. The reason I wanted to talk to you was to share some things going on with me and my wonderful wife, Kathy. I smiled at Kathy and then turned to face the three men at the bar. They didn't look happy. First, I want to share some good news with all of you. Kathy and I are going to have a baby. Many of the guests began to applaud. Kathy's hands went up to cover her face, which would have looked like mild embarrassment to anyone who didn't know what was really happening. Hanson looked angry, Bartlett confused. But I couldn't read Benson. There is more good news, too. Kathy told me that she is getting a promotion tonight because of her work on the national pharmaceutical deal. I understand that Kathy, Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Hanson, and Mr. Benson are meeting upstairs tonight to sign the contract. Isn't that great? More applause. Oh God, please stop, I heard Kathy say. She had stopped about 10 feet from me and slowly sat down on the floor. Hanson and Bartlett were livid, and Benson almost looked amused. This evening started off so strangely that I thought I would share it with you. When I got home from work tonight, I found my loving wife in the bathroom getting ready to shave. And I don't mean her legs or armpits. There was some laughter from the crowd, but most people were now sitting in stunned silence. We had a little argument about it. She told me it was supposed to be a surprise for me, and I told her not to do it. I thought I won that argument, but now I realize she wasn't shaving for me. She was doing it on orders from Jack. Kathy was just in the ladies' room, and I believe she shaved herself while she was in there. Now, all of you are probably wondering why Jack Hanson would tell Kathy she had to shave her intimate area. There was an audible gasp when I said that. Kathy was now lying on the floor, crying, and most of the guests were staring at me as if they were watching a train wreck. There were only two left. It looked as though Benson had skipped out. Hanson's face was bright red, and he was shaking. Bartlett was walking toward me as if he thought he could make me stop. The reason Kathy shaved is because she was to be a gift to Mr. Benson tonight, and Mr. Benson wanted her to be hairless. It seems that your company management thinks it's good business to encourage its employees to engage with potential customers to win contracts, even if it destroys a marriage. Now Bartlett was right in front of me and tried to take the microphone from me. I pulled the mic away from him and turned it off. Listen, if you try to grab the mic from me again, I'll drop you like a bag of rocks. Come to think of it, I might do that anyway. Bartlett backed away from me and looked over at Hanson. While they looked at each other, I turned the mic back on. One last thing, and this is for Bartlett and Hanson. I will be filing a lawsuit against this company for what you did to my marriage, and I'm sure I'll get a nice settlement. Part of that settlement will be that you two, and anyone else involved in this mess, will be fired. Good night, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your party. The room was dead silent as I set the mic down and walked over to where Kathy was lying on the floor. I squatted down beside her. Kathy. She looked up at me with tears running down her cheeks. Fred, I am so. Kathy, don't say anything, I interrupted. Do you think you'll get that promotion now? I stood up and looked around. People were staring at us, but when I looked back at them, they turned away. I looked down at Kathy one last time, and then left the room. I picked up my coat and was walking across the lobby toward the door when Hanson stepped in front of me. Do you have any idea what you've done? He asked. Yes, I said. I stopped you before you and your cronies could finish ruining my marriage. I hope I cost you millions. You're going to pay for this, Hanson said. Actually, I think you will be the one who pays for this, I said. Along with my lawsuit, I'm going to have a discussion with the SEC. I think they might be interested in the way this company has been doing business. I turned to leave, and Hanson grabbed my arm. Just a minute. I'm not through with you yet, he said. I brushed his arm away. You touch me again, and you won't be walking when you leave here tonight, I said. I could hear him muttering behind my back as I left. When I got home, I went straight to the liquor cabinet, got a bottle of scotch, and began to slowly drink myself into oblivion. I believe this was the genesis of my nightmares. I was on my second drink when I spotted something blue sitting in one of the big potted plants on the kitchen floor. I got up to see what it was. It was a blue plastic case, pretty well hidden under the foliage of the plant. I knew what it was as soon as I picked it up, and when I opened it, I confirmed my suspicion. I remembered something dropping out of the bathroom wastebasket Monday morning. I had looked all over the kitchen for it, but never thought to look in the flower pot. I went back to the sofa and put the case on the coffee table next to the scotch. I filled my glass and took a big gulp. Then I picked up the case and opened it again. As I stared at it, I thought to myself, "It's full, none missing." I put the case back down and poured another drink. I don't know how long I lasted, but I woke up on the sofa in the family room at 9 o'clock Saturday morning. The scotch bottle was nearly empty, my head was pounding, and my mouth tasted awful. I stood up and felt dizzy for a moment. My stomach felt like it was in full rebellion against me. I started the coffee maker and went off to take a shower. When I went upstairs, I noted that there was no sign that Kathy had come home. I didn't really expect that she would, either because she was afraid to face me, or because she was upset that I had disrupted everything at DCNH. I wasn't exactly sure if I cared either way. The shower helped. I felt a little better after 2 cups of coffee, scrambled eggs, and toast. I sat down on the sofa in the family room, trying to think about what my next move should be. It broke my heart to think about how much I had loved Kathy. I wondered how she could have done this to us. I couldn't believe that her ambition was so strong that she would agree to such an arrangement for a business deal. As if that wasn't bad enough, she was willing to shave herself for him too, just because Jack Hansen told her to. I doubted I would ever be able to forgive her for any of this, but I knew that I would have to give her a chance to explain herself if she wanted that chance. I just couldn't walk away without at least hearing what she had to say. But I would not pursue her to ask for an explanation. If she didn't feel the need to try and explain her actions to me, then I really didn't need to know why. The why would only be important if she wanted a second chance with me. I couldn't think of anything to do other than wait and see if Kathy tried to contact me. I began to wonder where she had spent the night, and then remembered the way she looked when I left the party. I felt a little guilty about leaving her on the floor that way. I realized that I should have brought her home with me. I wasn't too proud of myself, but I had been hurt and angry and felt no sympathy for Kathy at the time. The more I thought about it, the worse I felt, and the more I wondered where she was staying. I was still sitting on the sofa at 11 o'clock when the phone rang. I assumed it was Kathy calling and debated whether I should answer. I picked up the phone on the 6th ring. "Mr. Alpin." "Yes." "This is Special Agent Mark Walker of the FBI. The voice on the phone said, "Is your wife with you?" "My wife is not home," I said. I wondered why the FBI would want to talk to Kathy. "No problem. It's you I want to talk to," Agent Walker said. "Me?" I asked. "What's this about?" "I'd rather not discuss this over the phone," he said. "Can you come to my office this afternoon?" "I guess so," I said. "Where are you located?" Agent Walker gave me directions to his office, and I agreed to meet him there at 2 o'clock that afternoon. After the call, I tried to figure out what the FBI would want with me. The best I could figure is that it must have something to do with one of the cases I had worked on recently. If that was the case, why couldn't he tell me what he wanted over the phone? Over the years, I had often had to talk to different law enforcement agencies for cases I was working on, and it never bothered me. But for some reason, this invitation to talk to the FBI had me a little worried. At 1 o'clock, I dressed in jeans and a sweater and headed into town to meet with Agent Walker. I left my car in the parking garage across the street from the high-rise office building in downtown Indianapolis, which housed the FBI offices. I took the elevator up to their 7th-floor office and gave my name to the receptionist. "I'm here to see Special Agent Walker," I said. "Have a seat," "And I'll let him know you're here," she replied. I only had to wait 2 minutes before he came into the lobby to get me. Unlike the expensive Armani suit he had been wearing the night before, Special Agent Walker was now wearing blue Dockers and a white Oxford shirt with no tie. "Mr. Alpin, thanks for coming in," he said. "Please follow me." I followed him into a conference room. As I sat down, Agent Walker offered me a cup of coffee, which I accepted. He poured 2 cups from the coffee maker on a table in a corner and handed one to me. He took a sip of his coffee and then sat down across the table from me. "Should I call you Special Agent Walker or Mr. Benson?" I asked. "Why don't you try Mark?" he said, "and may I address you as Fred?" "Fred will be fine." "I guess you must be pretty confused right now," Mark said. "Yes, I am, but I think I'm starting to get a picture of what's going on," I said. "I take it you are working undercover as Mr. Benson." "That's right. I am counting on your discretion to keep anything I tell you confidential," he said. "I think you probably know that I am an investigator myself and understand confidentiality," I said. "I'm still not sure if you're a friend or foe. I hope you can explain all this to me and how my wife got involved in this mess. I will tell you what I can and will answer any questions as long as they don't jeopardize our investigation." "Okay, I'll listen to what you have to say, but I have to tell you that I'm really upset that my wife was used the way she was. This mess has probably ended my marriage," I said. "Things may not be as bad as you think," Mark said. "Let me just put you in the picture, and then you can ask your questions." "That's fine with me," I said. "Earlier this year, the Securities and Exchange Commission contacted the FBI," he started. "They had received some disturbing information about the business tactics of DC and H from someone inside the company, and asked that we investigate the allegations. After following up on the information given to us by the SEC, we found enough evidence to justify further investigation. I can't tell you about our investigations other than to say that it was decided to do some undercover work." Mark got up and began to pace around the room as he talked. "We found out through our investigation that DC and H had been trying to get National Pharmaceutical interested in a merger. Mr. Benson had spoken with one of our agents and indicated that he was concerned with DC and H's tactics. At that point, we discovered that no one from DC and H had met Mr. Benson. So with his cooperation, I took on his identity and began negotiating with DC and H. I was able to convince Mr. Hansen and Mr. Bartlett that I was Mr. Benson, and led them to believe that I was interested in their ideas for a merger and might be willing to sign a contract for them to handle the merger. When they began to drool over the millions of dollars they thought they would make off the deal, I started acting reluctant. I told them that I wanted to talk to some other firms before making a decision. The idea was to see what tactics they would use to try and get me to sign a deal with them." "So you asked for my wife?" I said. "Not exactly. On my first visits to the offices of DC and H, I was introduced to your wife as I was escorted to the conference room to meet with Bartlett and Hansen. I told Hansen that I would really like to talk to Mrs. Alpin. His response was, 'She is quite attractive, isn't she?' I agreed with him, but that wasn't why I'd asked to see her." "Why did you want to see her?" I asked. I told Hansen that because she was head of the accounting department, I wanted to talk to her about the financial condition of the company I was supposedly planning to merge with. The real reason was that your wife was the insider who contacted the SEC with concerns about how DC and H was doing business. "So Kathy knew that you were working undercover for the FBI?" I asked. "No, she didn't. I couldn't tell her," Mark said. "The information she sent to the SEC indicated that the company's problems involved people higher up in the company than Bartlett and Hansen. She had implicated the company president and the CEO. I didn't know if I could trust her, given that my assignment was investigating Bartlett and Hansen. I couldn't be sure she wouldn't blow my cover to protect them." "So Kathy had blown the whistle on the company execs." I didn't know what that meant to me. If she didn't know that Benson was a fake, was she planning to be with him at the party? I had questions I wanted to ask Mark, but decided to wait until he finished, to see if I would get any answers from what he was telling me. As I was saying, I had indicated to Hansen that I might back out of the deal, so he asked me what it would take to get me to sign with DC and H. I asked him what he had to offer. That's when Hansen said, "I noticed that you thought Kathy Alpin was pretty special. How would you like to get close to her?" I was surprised at that. I expected him to offer me a bribe. I had to see where this would lead, so I told him I might be interested, but I didn't commit. This next part may be difficult for you to hear, but it is important to this story. "There's nothing you can say that would be any more upsetting than what I have already been through," I said. "Okay then," Mark said. I waited a few days and then met with Hansen again. He asked me if I had thought over his offer. I asked him if he meant by his offer that he would arrange for me to be with your wife, and he answered yes. I didn't want to act too anxious, so I said that I was definitely interested but still wasn't sure if she would be worth it. Hansen assured me that she would be, and then said, "She has a shaved kitty. Wouldn't you like to be with her?" "So you never suggested that you wanted Kathy to shave?" I asked. "No," Mark said. "Since I hadn't planned on being with her, that thought never entered my mind." I still wasn't even sure how Hansen could promise to deliver on his offer, so I asked him how he would get a married woman to agree to be with me as payment for signing a contract. "You let me worry about that," Hansen said. "If you want her, she's yours." "That son of a—" I said. "Who does he think he is? He's one sleazy character." The more he talked about me being with your wife, the more excited he seemed to become. I got the feeling that he wanted me to accept his offer for more reasons than just getting me to sign the contract. I let him go on for a while, and then asked him when he could arrange for me to be with your wife. He immediately said that we would do it during the company Christmas party on the 20th. "So you were going to go through with it?" I said. "You were going to be with my wife just to keep your undercover investigation going?" "No, I had no intention of being with your wife," Mark said. "First of all, it would be unethical for me to do that. And second, I was almost positive that the room where I was to meet with your wife would have hidden cameras and microphones to record the action. This was to be more than just a favor to get me to sign the contract. It was also designed to give them material that could be used to blackmail me." "How were you going to get out of it?" I asked. "I planned to balk at the last moment and say that the circumstances weren't right. Then I was going to say that I would be willing to close the deal, but that Mrs. Alpin would have to join me in my hotel room after the party. Then, once I had her alone, I was going to identify myself and bring her down here to be interrogated. We planned on arresting Bartlett and Hansen today. We thought that by this morning we would have enough evidence to indict them both. Then, last night, you walked up to me and introduced yourself and said that you were with security. The fact is, I knew who you were, and I was afraid that you knew what was going on and were a party to it. I wasn't sure which side of things you were on until you got up and made your speech." "Oh," I said. "I hope I didn't mess up your investigation, but I couldn't stand by and just let my wife give herself to another man as part of a business deal." "I understand," Mark said. "And you didn't really do any damage. You actually saved me from having to deal with the meeting I was supposed to have with them at 10 o'clock last night. I was able to leave with my cover intact so that I could talk to Hansen again this morning. He made me a large cash offer to sign today. I told him I would meet him in his office Monday morning, and when he hands me the money, we will arrest him and shut down the operations of DC and H while we do an in-depth investigation of every deal they've been involved with for the last 3 years. I still don't know where Kathy stands in all this," I said. "Your wife was trying to do the right thing by blowing the whistle on the company," he said. "As for her part in the offer made to me, I suspect that she was being coerced by Hansen. He may be blackmailing her somehow." "Was there any mention of your using protection?" I asked. "Yes. Once I agreed to the deal, Hansen made it very clear to me that Kathy insisted I would have to use protection. We wouldn't want to get the poor girl pregnant now, would we?" Hansen said. "Now I knew I was going to have to find Kathy," I said. I wanted to hear her side of the story. She was not completely innocent in this mess, but there were extenuating circumstances. That is really all I can tell you right now, Mark said. Do you have any more questions? Not right now. Good. Again, I have to remind you not to discuss any of this investigation with anyone. I would ask that you not tell your wife anything yet. Wait until we have Bartlett and Hansen under indictment before you tell her this was all an FBI sting operation. That should only be a couple of days from now. We'll want to talk to her then anyway. I agreed not to say anything about the investigation, and then Mark told me he would call me and let me know when I could tell Kathy about the FBI sting. He also mentioned that they would probably want to depose me to get my side of the story. We shook hands, and I left the building. When I got home, there was a message from Kathy asking me to call her. I called the number she left, and a woman answered the phone. Who should I say is calling? The voice asked. Tell her it's her husband, I said. Kathy's voice sounded nervous when she came on the line. Where have you been? She asked. I've been calling all day. Not all day, I said. I was home until 1 o'clock this afternoon. Oh, I guess that's about when I started calling you. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. She was going to have to show me that she was ready to tell me what was going on, so I remained silent. Fred, can I come home? She said. This is where you live, isn't it? I said. You should be here now. I'll be home in an hour. Okay, I said and hung up. I decided to have dinner ready when she got there, and then we could talk after dinner. I made spaghetti and meatballs, a salad, and then opened a bottle of wine. Kathy walked in the door at 6:05, and the dinner was ready. When she saw dinner on the table and the open bottle of wine, I could see some of the stress leave her face. She could see that things were not going to be as bad as she first thought. At first, we didn't speak. We went over and sat at the table. I poured the wine, and we started eating. After a few minutes of painful silence, I asked Kathy where she had spent the night. One of my friends took me home after you left, she said. I couldn't help but get a little dig in. Oh, you didn't stay for the rest of the party. I pretty much ended the party with my speech, she said. I guess I owe some people apologies for that. Not you, and certainly not Bartlett or Hansen. I guess you're right, I said. I owe you the apology. She was about to say more, but I stopped her and said that we would talk after dinner. We both became silent again. There was really nothing else for the two of us to talk about at that moment. After dinner, Kathy started to put the dishes into the dishwasher, but I stopped her. You can clean the kitchen later. We need to talk now, I said. We went into the family room and sat facing each other. Do you want to just tell me everything, or should I start asking questions? Either way, I expect only the truth, I said. I'll tell you everything, she said. I'm sure you know when it started. It was the day after your Christmas party. Jack called me and told me that this huge deal they were working on with National Pharmaceutical was in trouble. Jack told me Mr. Benson had said he would only sign the contract if I agreed to be with him. I couldn't believe that he would ask me to do something like that, and I was furious. But he told me that this deal was very important to the company, and if I went along with it, I would be rewarded handsomely. He was talking about a lot of money and a promotion. I didn't want to do it, but Jack kept putting pressure on me, saying that a lot of people were depending on me. I told them I would have to think about it. They had me so confused and stressed over this that I couldn't think straight. When you came home and I looked at you, I knew that I could not do that to you. Jack and Mr. Bartlett kept after me all day Monday trying to get me to agree. Mr. Hansen said that if this deal fell through, it would be my fault, and they would have to let me go. They also said that if I told anyone about what was going on, I would be fired. I tried to tell you as much as I could. I knew that if you knew the whole story, you would do something crazy, and I would lose my job. On Tuesday, I told them I would not do it. So they told me to think about it again. Then Mr. Hansen told me that the company was missing more than $100,000, and that if there were an audit, it would look like I had been embezzling money from the company for the last few years. Jack said I would end up going to jail. He told me that if I did what he asked, I would get the money he promised and the promotion. But if I didn't cooperate, there would be an audit, and I would be charged with embezzlement. In the end, I had to agree to do what he wanted. Jack and Mr. Bartlett talked with me every day to make sure I didn't back out. They kept telling me I was doing the right thing and trying to convince me that you would understand if you knew how important this deal was. I had listened passively up to this point, but I was getting angry. You can't believe that I would ever have thought what you were doing was all right, I said. You should have told me everything. I would have found a way out for you. I know, Kathy said. Once I decided to go through with it, I felt a little better, but I felt so guilty about what I was doing to you. You have to understand that I was terrified of going to jail. I had to risk it. On Friday, Jack called me into his office and told me that Mr. Benson wanted me to shave all my pubic hair off. I told him I couldn't do that because you would be angry, but Jack said it would be a deal breaker if I didn't shave it off. Mr. Benson would walk away from the deal. Jack told me to shave it off before the party and not let you see it until later. Then I was to tell you it was meant to be a surprise. He said that if you got mad, all I had to do was say that I was sorry and that I would let it grow back. The problem was that you came home earlier than expected and caught me getting ready to shave it off. So, was I right? I asked. Did you shave yourself in the ladies' room at the party? Kathy looked down at her hands. Yes, Mr. Bartlett sent someone to the store to pick up a razor and some shave cream, and I went into the ladies' room and shaved myself. When I came back to the party, I saw you at the microphone trying to get everyone's attention. I was so scared. I had no idea what you were up to, and I had no idea if there was any way I could stop you. I couldn't believe you said that I was pregnant. I didn't say you were pregnant, I said. I said we were going to have a baby. You weren't pregnant yet, but that was our plan, wasn't it? Well, yes, but what? Are we or aren't we going to start a family? I asked. Yes, we are. I will get off my birth control pills tomorrow, and then we can start. One more question, I said. Did you tell Benson that he would have to use a condom? Jack told me he was going to make him use one, she said. I'm glad he did because it hadn't occurred to me. I was so stressed by the whole situation that I wasn't thinking straight. Anyway, you made your little speech and basically ended my career at DC&H and probably killed the deal with National Pharmaceutical. So, essentially what you're telling me is that Bartlett and Hansen coerced and blackmailed you into agreeing to be with Benson to close a business deal. They further insisted that you had to fulfill Benson's demand that you shave, but I messed things up by catching you when you were trying to shave. Even after I told you not to do it, you shaved yourself anyway. In the end, the only reason you didn't end up being with Benson is because I messed everything up with my little speech. Does that about sum it up? Yes, but I don't blame you for what you did. I understand why you did it, she said. Oh good, then you forgive me for trying to keep my wife from being with another man, I said sarcastically. That's not what I meant. I know you had every right to react the way you did, and I have no right to be upset with you. I am upset with myself. I should have told you everything from the start. Do you think you will ever be able to forgive me? Kathy asked. That depends, I said. Is that everything? Have you told me everything I need to know about what has been going on? Yes, I have told you everything, she said. I love you, and I can't bear to think that I could lose you because of this mess I got myself into. Well, things don't look as bad as they did at first, I said, and I watched the smile start to come back into Kathy's face. I just have a couple of questions I need answered, and then we might be able to put this behind us. Okay, what questions? I could hear the joy creeping back into her voice. I pulled the blue case out of my pocket and tossed it on the coffee table. I found this in the trash the other day, and it's full. You threw away all of your birth control pills last week, but you not only didn't tell me about that, you tried to make me believe you were still taking them. Just 5 minutes ago, you said you would stop taking them tomorrow. Can you explain that to me? Kathy looked like I had punched her. Her mouth opened a couple of times, but no words came out. When she finally spoke, I was sure she was lying. "You're right. I stopped taking my pills," she said. "I was planning to let you get me pregnant and then surprise you. I know how much you wanted to start a family, so I thought it would be a nice surprise when I told you about it. That plan would only have worked if you and I had been intimate, but the last time we made love was the day before I stopped taking my pills," I replied. "It's just that I was so upset about what Mr. Bartlett and Jack wanted me to do that I wasn't in the mood during that time," Kathy explained. "Were you aware that last night was the most fertile night of your cycle?" I asked. That was another question that stunned her. "No, I wasn't aware of that. I had too many other things on my mind to be thinking about that," she claimed. "It just strikes me as odd that you were planning on being with Benson last night, which happens to be in the middle of your cycle, and it never occurred to you to insist on protection, but it did occur to Jack to require it," I said. "What are you trying to say?" she asked. "That I knew I was fertile and was willing to take a chance of getting pregnant." "I would never do that," she protested. I could tell Kathy was really rattled. I was getting tired of playing with her and decided to end the game. "One more question, Kathy," I started. "How long have you been seeing Hanson?" "What?" was all she could manage to say. "No more lies. I know that you were keeping track of your cycle and had marked last night in your planner. I know that Hanson insisted Benson wear a condom, and since I wasn't with you, that leaves only Hanson. He wanted to get you pregnant, didn't he?" I looked at Kathy, and she started crying, but made no attempt to answer me. "It was Hanson who wanted you to make those changes, not Benson, and you did that for him despite me telling you not to. That shows me that he has more influence over you than I do. Lest you think I'm just guessing, last night when I came home, I saw you standing in the living room with Hanson. He kissed your stomach, the way a man often does when he's thinking of a baby, his baby. Did you think I wouldn't know, or were you planning to leave me all along? You spent last night with him, didn't you?" Kathy was weeping loudly as I stood up and left the room. When I came back into the kitchen, carrying my suitcase, Kathy looked up at me. When she saw what I was doing, she jumped out of her chair and ran to me. "Please don't leave me. I love you. I don't love Jack," she cried. "I told you he blackmailed me. I had no choice but to do what he asked. Why didn't you just continue taking your pills and lie to Jack?" "You didn't have any problem lying to me," I said. "I think I would have to believe what you told that man more than anything you've told me lately. I forgot to mention that last night, while I was watching you, I heard you say, 'I love you' to him. So where does that leave me? I don't love him. If I am pregnant, I will end it. I love you. Please, you have to believe me," she pleaded. "No, I don't," I replied. "And don't end it on my account." Kathy collapsed on the floor, crying. When I looked back from the garage door, she looked just like she had the night before. I no longer felt any love for her, only disgust. I hated leaving the house we had worked so hard to build, but it held no fond memories for me. Fortunately, we hadn't lived there long enough to create those memories. It's been more than 2 years since I walked out on Kathy. When I left, I found a furnished apartment and tried to start over. That's when the nightmares started. I wasn't happy with what I was doing, so I quit my job and moved to California. Once I settled, I started my own insurance investigation company. I called Bill Ripley and asked if he'd like to be my partner. 2 months later, he joined me. When he arrived, he told me that Mary Fox had heard about our company and asked if we had a job for her. Mary moved out here 14 months ago, and we started dating 2 months later. After 3 months, we moved in together. I was surprised that I fell in love again so quickly. I wasn't in a hurry to marry, but I liked having someone to share my life with. I've kept in touch with my contacts in Indianapolis, including Special Agent Mark Walker. It turned out that Kathy had blown the whistle on the company president and CEO under Jack Hanson's direction. Hanson had them in trouble for shady deals, so the board would fire them, and he'd take over as company president. Apparently, Kathy wasn't lying when she said she didn't love him. She was using him because he was in love with her. She knew if he got what he wanted, she'd get anything she wanted. Hanson and his wife didn't have any children, which he blamed on his wife. After I left, he tried for more than a month to get Kathy pregnant, but wasn't successful with her either. It turned out that he was sterile. His wife found out about his affair with Kathy and divorced him. A month later, he was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for his actions at D.C., and H. Bartlett also got jail time. He will be spending 2 years at a minimum security federal prison. Kathy was fired by D.C. and H., and then the company was reorganized, and shortly after that, bought out by a larger consulting firm. The last I heard, Kathy was teaching bookkeeping at a community college just outside of Columbus, Ohio. I try not to think about Kathy, but the wounds are still too fresh for me to recall the good times we had. I don't miss her, which is a relief. Mary more than fills the gap Kathy left in my life, and that is why I marry her. Now, here I sit, staring down at her and wondering if I should wake her up, not to tell her I had the dream again, but to tell her I love her. Last night, Mary told me that whenever I decide I want a baby, all I have to do is ask. But make sure to get your order in early because you have to wait 9 months for delivery, Mary added. I'm thinking of placing my order tomorrow. By the way, in case you were wondering about DCNH, you were right if you were thinking Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe.